Conquer the Noise is a podcast produced by Unconquered, an independent agency challenging brand perspective through redefined content. This podcast is dedicated to telling stories of outstanding ideas and people who have found their way amongst the chatter. Welcome. I'm Jonathan Hansen, Chief Creative Officer at Unconquered, and I'm your host of Cultivating Purpose and Passion in Business. Today, we're speaking with Anne Marisic, who's the Marketing Events Manager at Maine Beer Co. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you for having me.
When we got the notification from 1% for the Planet that you're interested in talking with us, we were super psyched. We've been fans of Maine Beer for a long time, so it's really great to have you on.
Thank you. We were happy to be on. It's this year I was supposed to go and speak at 1% for the Planet's Global Summit, and I was really excited to talk with people and meet other 1% for the Planet businesses and nonprofits, and then COVID happened. So this is great to have an opportunity to, talk, answer some questions, and kind of share what Maine Beer Company is about and what we're doing.
Yeah, so what I was really looking forward to that as well, is also just getting a trip to California and getting out of New York. What were some of the things that, if you don't mind sharing, I'd love to hear some of the topics that you were speaking to at it.
So I was on a panel about how businesses are engaging their employees and getting them involved in 1% for the Planet. Mm-hmm. We've been part of 1% for the Planet since our company began. Our owners, Daniel and David Kleban, started the company with sort of in the midst of the recession of 2008. And they were looking around going, this is not how businesses should run. Mm-hmm. They're not taking care of people. They're not taking care of the environment. It's just this ruthless, cutthroat environment. And that doesn't have to be that way. So when they started the company, they said, we will take care of our people. We will take care of our communities. We'll take care of our planet. And we're going to make great beer while we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And we believe strongly that we can do that and still be a successful business. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. So they joined 1% for the Planet because they knew the environment was something that they were passionate about. And they liked the accountability that came with it, knowing that there is someone like going through the books at the end of the year, making sure that you have honored your commitments, but also that there's this whole community of other businesses and nonprofits that share this passion and are excited about, working for a better environment. Mm-hmm. So part of my job, I'm marketing and events, and sort of atypical for that position. When I was first presented with it, I was like, "Ooh, marketing! I don't know." And they're like, "Well, all of our marketing is tied up in our nonprofit work. We don't do paid advertisements unless it's tied to our nonprofits." I was like, "Oh." So I get to talk to people about beer and use beer to do good things for the environment and our community. All right, that's marketing I can get behind. Yeah. While my title says marketing and events, nonprofit manager is probably one of the larger roles. And what I was going to speak about was mostly how we get our staff involved. I get a lot of questions from other businesses about how do you engage people? How do you get people interested? And we're really lucky. I think a lot of people come to us already passionate about the environment. Mm-hmm. They see the company, they see what we do, and are kind of like, I want to sign up for that. So it's not hard getting people onboarded with those ideas, but it's really exciting when you get to share what our partnerships do, all of the things that they're engaged in, and get our staff involved. But then also we started a program last year, a staff scholarship, to kind of broaden our reach. And the idea was to each month have staff nominate a 1% for the Planet nonprofit that they were individually passionate about. And then we have a panel that talks it over. We definitely side with nonprofits that people have a personal tie to, whether they've donated, they've volunteered, or just, care immensely about. And we've gotten so many great connections and gotten our staff really engaged in the program and how we give back, to the point where I'm constantly fielding calls about, can we support this? Can we be involved with this? And that's a great problem to have.
It is. And I think it's a really smart strategically, I think even from the business side of just keeping employees, I think engaged and morale high, is being able to support the things that they're interested in as well, that fall in line with what the mission is. And
Definitely.
one of the things that really stuck out to me was the "Do What's Right"
Hmm.
sort of tagline that is on T-shirts, and I see it in your branding and everything. And I think really sets, in a very simple and straightforward way, sets up the business and people to know the point of view of Maine Beer Co. Um, how are you sort of seeing that? I guess you've talked to some of it already, but what are other ways that you're seeing that manifest itself
Yeah.
within the business?
It's so, I mean, it's funny because it's three simple words, but they on some levels are so complex, but it comes down it we joke about it, but it really informs every decision we make.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's picking out a t-shirt that we're going to use in the tasting room. Um, is it a 1% for the planet company? Okay, we can't find one of those. What are their sustainability practices? What are the company's beliefs? Great, we found eConscious that makes recycled plastic bottle t-shirts. All fits in
Mm-hmm.
line. That's what's right. Um, it really every single thing. We always joke like, what would Dave Kleban do? And
Mm-hmm.
it's to him, it's just so clear. As long as we're doing what's right and allowing that to guide our decisions as a company, we're on the right path. The second we stray from that, we need to reassess what we're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good kind of Jiminy Cricket guide for a business and
Mm-hmm.
how we operate.
So I would like to back up just a little bit and
Mhm.
talk to like how you found Maine Beer Co. or how they found you, and what led to your work there. As I think a lot of times businesses with such clear missions attract people,
Mhm.
um, and attract customers. So I'm really curious to how you got connected.
It's kind of a long, long story, but I had been working in Washington, D.C. I was managing a beer bar called Church Key. It's, one of I will argue, one of the best beer bars in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Just a huge commitment to quality of the beer, presenting the beer, educating people about beer. And I I'm a saver, so I have all of my pre-shift sheets from pretty
Mm-hmm.
much every single day that I worked there because I love keeping that information. Like, what beers were we serving? What food did we have on? Did we have any special guests? And I still have my pre-shift sheet from, I believe it was November 6th, 2012, which was a
Mm-hmm.
really good day in Washington, D.C., because it was President Obama's second election that he
Mm-hmm.
won. And we hosted that day, Daniel and David Kleban, and we were the first. We were the first bar in Washington D.C. to introduce Maine Beer Company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I look back at those notes, it was so clear. It's do what's right, talking about the ingredients, talking about quality, creating crisp, clean, well-crafted, balanced beers. And as a beer lover, that's something that I always look for. I'm willing to try a broad range of things, but what I come back to and what you'll always find in my fridge are those really classic, well-made beers. And I was just impressed with their beer right from the start, and it kind of hung with me. And that was a beer that we kept, Peeper, which is the pale
Mm-hmm.
ale. We kept that on draft for quite a long time, as much as we could get it in DC. Same with lunch. Um, and then many years, I'd visited a few times. And then many years later, I was getting ready to leave DC. I was coming to Maine. Um, I moved here. I worked another place for a while, and I had always kind of had Maine Beer Company as one of the places that I really admired. And stars aligned, and I had a conversation going with a few of the people in management here, and the position opened up, and I fell into the best job of my life.
So moved up to Maine. I
Hmm.
think of Maine as such a beautiful place, and I think just the location really helps. I think inspire that giving back because you're so
Oh, for sure.
connected to the environment. Like I live in New York City, I'm sure you can relate being in DC.
Yep.
The wildlife are like pigeons and squirrels
Rats.
and rats, and there aren't a lot of trees or that necessarily that natural beauty, and
Mhm.
you feel a lot more removed and I think less connected to the environment. So um, I can definitely see why there's such an initiative there to support it and keep it going.
And I feel like everywhere you go in Maine, I think sometimes when you're living in a city, you kind of feel that environmental beliefs are something for kind of a certain segment of the population. Like,
Uh huh.
rich people can recycle, and it seems like it takes effort to do. Whereas here, I feel like it's ingrained in so much of the culture in the entire state. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. There are recycle bins everywhere. There's composting everywhere,
Hmm.
and I always joke like I was not a good recycler before I started working here. And
Hmm.
when it's just everywhere and part of your daily, you know, like I can't walk to throw something away without first seeing a recycle bin. So
It's really
I'm,
ingrained in the culture. Yeah.
yep. And
Yeah.
I think that makes it easier. And then before you know it, suddenly you can't think of a way of doing it otherwise.
Hmm.
So it's pretty cool.
One of the things I think that first struck me when I saw Maine Beer Co on the shelf was the label. It's
Mhm.
so different than a lot of other craft breweries, especially right now. A lot of them are so much animation. There's a lot of cartoons, a lot of like kitschiness, playing on different names, and the Maine Beer Co is just white, some black copy, usually pushed towards the top,
Yep.
and a lot of white space. And
Yep.
I love how straightforward it is. And it seems very deliberate as far as focus on what's important.
Yeah. Well, if you ever are get a chance to visit up here and see our space, it also has that same aesthetic. And if you meet David Kleban, you'll understand why he's an artist himself and really prefers just kind of a minimalist aesthetic. But again, it's focus on what's important here. We're making great beer, and it's do what's right. You're
Hmm.
there's amazing and beautiful label artwork out there. I'm not trying to
Hmm.
say anything against it, but it's so funny because if you go into a bottle shop and which not so much bottles anymore, we stand out one because of her bottle,
Hmm.
but also because it's a very plain white label, so it stands out amidst everything else, and it kind of calls to you. There was also a running joke that since the copy is so small, you have to pick it up to look closer at it. And once it's in your hand, are you really going to put it down?
Yeah.
You'll probably
Yeah.
just throw it in the cart.
Yeah.
So,
Um, that's brilliant. I think what I'm really curious about is when I see businesses like Maine Beer Company, how they've grown without a lot of advertising, and I think that's really kind of tied to that philosophy behind the label in some ways. It's like it's super simple and direct. But how have you, as director of marketing, how have you helped to grow the brand in a way that doesn't rely on ads?
well, I think a lot of it, again, is connecting to what people are passionate about. Obviously, every time I post a picture of a glass of beer, it gets an obscene number of likes,
Hmm.
and sometimes less of a response when I post some of our nonprofit work, and that's something we're always trying to kind of push and be like, hey, pay attention to this.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think it's refreshing to not rely on, I guess, paid marketing and advertisements to because that feels like it's pushing the brand.
Hmm.
And one thing that I've always heard Daniel Kleban say is we want to be pulled into the market. You never want to push because when you pull, that means people want you and creating that demand. And I think for us, so much of it is tied into who we are as a company.
Hmm.
We are known for making really fantastic beer, and I'm really proud of the product we make because we've really stood by the styles, the quality. Our QA QC department is, just the work they do is so impressive at every single stage of the process, making sure that the beer that's going out is the best quality. So I think, getting people behind that idea that, it's not always just about how much you can produce or how many things you can put in a beer. It's, staying true to a great recipe and, delicious beer, but then also what we're about. I think knowing that we take care of our employees very well. This is the first job I've ever had that I had a 401k and I needed to be walked through that. I was like, I don't know how this works. And I'm not young, so it's pretty exciting to have those things. But then also that every time you purchase our beer, you are helping us do good. I think that's something that people feel good about. Knowing that often our beer is going to cost a little bit more than some of the others on the market, but we're not taking that money and, turning around and rolling in a Scrooge McDuck money pit. We're taking it and saying, how can we help this community nonprofit? How can we provide solar for this organization? How can we, do better with sustainability in-house, and, lessen the impact that we're making? So we're making really conscious decisions with the money that we're making as a company. And I think that's really important. I know when I look at where I'm spending my own money, that's what I'm looking for in a company that I feel is making good decisions.
Yeah, one of the when I was reading through the startup story, I really could relate to the painstaking detail they put into brewing and just focus on one beer, do it really well, and kind of go from there. And I think that laser focus and that like drive has helped grow the brand in a way, just because it hasn't clouded the vision. Because when you're looking at building a business, or when you're looking at exploring beer making or a new hobby or anything like that, I think it can be really overwhelming in the beginning because of all the learning that takes place. So when I think about how the company is really embracing nonprofits, and I feel like it really embraces that laser focus on having a very strong strategy towards growing that. Craft brewing has changed so much in the last 10 years, and especially since even when Maine Beer Co was founded and started. And there's so much competition now just for shelf space, and then locally, even if they're not distributing outside of their region. Are you using the I don't want to say using, but is the environmental side really the differentiator between you and your other competitors, or how are you sort of navigating that?
I think it does make us stand out. Obviously, there are a ton of amazing breweries doing some phenomenal things, and we're really lucky to have that community. We talk frequently. We give a little shout out to our friends at Allagash, who they have an amazing sustainability program, and we work a lot with them, talking over ideas, what people are doing. But I think in terms of what sets us apart, it is the fact we've been doing this for 11 years. We're not that's the best way of phrasing this. We're not following trends. Again, it's that idea of you want to be pulled in rather than push. And we know what we're really good at. And what we're really good at is classic hop forward beers. So you're never going to see us stray from that. However, we do have a program in-house. It's sort of our R&D program. We're calling it our Black Barn program, named after our new entrance from our building. And this is, it's a great way our staff get to experiment with different recipes, different processes, just different ingredients sometimes. And out of that came our newest beer this year, which is a Pilsner. So we've never really done Pilsners and had it be a regular part of our lineup. Now we have one. It is still very hop forward. So it's a Pilsner, but done Maine Beer Company style. So it's staying very true to who we are. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart, being very true to who we are and knowing who that was from the start. I think there are a lot of breweries who are struggling to find their identity. And sometimes in doing that, they're brewing a ton of different styles and not really perfecting one. Not to criticize that. There's a time and a place for every beer, as my dad always used to say. But I think to really succeed and have longevity, really finding what you're good at and excelling at it is one of the best ways to be successful in the business.
So it sounds like there's definitely a strong work culture or team culture there, and it's relevant through the programs you're doing, especially the R&D and the paid wages paid and the insurance premiums that are covered, which I read about. What else are you doing? I'd love to hear more about that.
Our culture and the staff culture. Yeah. I think it's so amazing. And Dan often comments that he's like, everybody really likes each other. And he's like, you all hang out outside of work. He's like, you don't usually see that. And I think it stems from having, we have an amazing staff. I'm constantly impressed by just like the complexity of the individuals who work here. And, you'll be talking to someone, know what they do and, have a general idea who they are. And then you find out, oh, our head brewer is a NASA scientist. Cool. Or,
is that really the case? You have a head brewer that's a NASA scientist?
Yeah. Cole Corbin is a NASA scientist.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Not too shabby. If we decide to go to space, we've got a guy. But, we have other staff. I'm working closely with one of our production team members who he's got this amazing background in sustainability, and we created the Blue Crew. We love toying around with names. It was like the Green Team, the Blue Crew, but trying to come up with a sustainability group. And the idea was to get someone from every single department and work together from like very little things like, are we composting things correctly? Can we set up a recycling center for our staff for bottle caps, pack techs, corking cage, just small little things that you don't really think about, but need to be recycled a certain way. So from things like that, all the way up to what is the possibility of getting a system that would allow us to recapture the carbon dioxide that's created by brewing beer and reuse it, which is a very expensive piece of equipment and process. But, we want this group of people to be involved kind of at every single level to really help advance our company. And I think that because of that, because of organizations like that within our company, other groups that we have, people feel very invested in what we do. And that just creates a culture where we care, everybody here really cares. And that's exciting to see. And it's exciting to be part of.
I know you're not necessarily a part of the hiring team, but is there something around the process or what you are seeing leadership look for when they're hiring? Having a NASA scientist, I love that. Just like that diversity in itself from hearing about that one person and what those experiences can bring in to beer making. Yeah. What are you looking for?
Well, I think this is actually something that we've been talking a lot about lately. Obviously, with everything going on right now in our country, diversity, inclusion is a huge topic. So we have been really evaluating our hiring practices. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what do you do to make sure that, how do you redefine what are the best qualities for someone who has for someone's position. So if you're hiring for a sales position, do you make those requirements? Must have a background in sales, must have worked for a wholesaler or a brewery before, or do you make those qualities that you're looking for? Must be a good people person, must be good at engaging and building relationships. And I think we lean more towards that side and always have. And that's something that we want to actually grow and expand on to make sure that when we're putting when we're putting jobs out there, that we are drawing the best people for the job and making sure that we're really defining what that is. In my own position, I was coming at this. I've been managing bars and restaurants and breweries for years, and so when I was approached with a marketing position, I was like, I don't know how to market. Is that what I know how to do? And then we talked over the job, and it was just presented in a way that was so different. And I was like, oh, I have been doing all those things all along. I've just also been managing a large staff and, help doing all of the bills and doing too many other things. It's like, oh, when I can zero my focus in on talking about a brand, engaging with the community, working with our nonprofits, I love doing that. So I think some of it is how we define the jobs, but also how we get people to think about their own positions. I'm technically a marketing team of one, but I engage with pretty much every single department in this company. And, that was one of the hard things with the coronavirus quarantining. I was work from home for several months, and it was so hard to not on a daily basis engage with production, packaging, tasting room, sales, accounting, all of these different groups. So I think, that's how we're able to get some of these really great employees. It's people who are passionate, but people who can kind of think outside of the box of their own job role.
Yeah, it sounds like they're really investing in people over experience or in enabling and creating an environment that supports growth. And I think that's super important and is really probably a huge part of the growth at the Maine Beer Company. How many barrels of beer now are you selling and producing?
So last year we were close to 22,000 barrels, 25,000 barrels. This year it's going to drop, obviously, because of everything that's been going on. So we'll be closer to 22,000. We had projected being
that's not that bad of
a
drop, really, considering.
Well, we were projecting this year to be closer to 30,000. So
wow. Okay. I spoke too soon.
Yeah. But it's, that's one thing that we've seen without this, dealing with these setbacks is incredible flexibility within our staff about how to adjust. We went from being almost 70% draft, and when draft wasn't a possibility, we switched, and now our bottle sales have increased. Figuring out good ways to change. Last year, we had opened our brand new tasting room, which had expanded had been about 5 times larger than our old space. And we went from huge space, welcome everyone, to, all right, we can't have you in our space, so how do we do this? And switching to curbside. So we've been doing some somersaults, getting things switched around, but it's a team that has worked really, really hard to get through this, and they're doing a great job.
So it sounds like you're dealing with a lot of unplanned adversity at the moment, as a lot of us are. How are you embracing those changes and pivoting quickly? Because as the news changes weekly, the rules is one moment we're heading towards reopening. And we're heading towards reopening. The next minute they're scaling it back. How are you guys pivoting so quickly and making those decisions? Is it you're coming together and then leadership, or is it more of a collective process?
A little bit of both. We've for a while there was a lot of Zoom meetings.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so much of it is we already have a crew of people who are really good at, thinking on their feet. And, so we had a lot of discussions about how to do things, but also an understanding of we were going to try things. And if it didn't work, having an alternative plan in place. I think for me, from a marketing position, all of my events disappeared. Made a promise I'm never writing things in a calendar in pen again, because it's just a big black squares of things
Uh-huh.
crossed through. But suddenly not having events, it was good because I needed to shift my entire focus to our social media and PR and communications about here are our new processes, here are our new procedures. And then, kind of in the wake of racial injustice in our country, how do we talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
What is our role as a brewery, as leaders? And, it's we suddenly have people just have a laser focus on social media currently. A little bit less now as things are starting to open up, but at a time when everybody was kind of at home and staying at home, it was just eyes on social, and you had to be very thoughtful about what you're saying, how you're saying it, and making sure that you're addressing things appropriately. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not an easy task for anyone, but a new challenge that we all have to meet.
Yeah, it's difficult. Are there any, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are there
Mhm.
any like key takeaways you've come out of this?
Yeah, I think for us, a huge part was taking our time, which is
Mm-hmm.
difficult because, both with the coronavirus experience and addressing racial unrest, these are both situations that I think people that rightfully so require urgency in how they're dealt with, but
Yeah.
not haste. And I think that's an important distinction. And I think really taking the time to, from a health and safety position, making sure that your company is doing everything they possibly can to care for the health and safety of their staff and their customers, and
Mm-hmm.
then dealing with sort of the racial side of things, um, knowing where you aren't an expert and reaching out to the right resources for help. We've
Mm-hmm.
been working very closely with Dr. J. Jackson Beckham, who runs Craft Beer for All,
Mm-hmm.
and leaning on her for resources, for advice about how to address things. We felt it was very important that not to just kind of jump full bore into the discussion, to look at where our positions of um, where our positions of power were, where people expected to hear from us, and we focus very much in the beer community and on the environment. So,
Mm-hmm.
in talking about race and inclusion and justice in our country, we want to address our beer community and what are we doing to make these spaces more welcoming, more accessible to a wider range of people. We think we do a pretty good job here, but you can always do better. Maine is definitely not as diverse as most places, but
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean it can't be. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the jobs of people here in our state. What are we doing to make this a more welcoming space? And then from the environmental side, again, who are the groups that we're engaging? How can we do better? And we've been working with Outdoor Afro. Rumap founded the organization, and she's an amazing, amazing leader. And we've been talking with them about how do we engage with the people in our community, about getting them outside, providing really cool, engaging outdoor experiences, encouraging people, making them feel welcome in these public places that we've taken so much care to preserve. But then also, what are we missing? How do we do better? And making sure that we're part of a conversation, not leading the conversation.
Yeah, honestly, I think you guys are doing a great thing in taking time and seeking outside opinions because, often we're surrounded by our own opinions, our own views, kind of like that echo chamber of hearing the same thing over and over again. So welcoming that, I think, is one difficult because it kind of puts you on exposes some vulnerability. You're welcoming criticism,
Yep.
which is not necessarily always easy. Um, but I think it's really smart to start turning to some outside organizations for help and guidance.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious to what some of those learnings have been for you or your team during this process.
I think some of it, especially through the Craft Beer for All community, we've been part of a couple different forums with them, and there are just some really good discussions, and it's great to engage. We've been talking, through that community. We've been talking with other breweries that are larger than us, breweries that are a lot smaller, the cider community, and it's really interesting to see how people are struggling with these things, but how thoughtful they are about really wanting to reverse the course. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really great to see that change. And I think the important
Mm-hmm.
thing right now is to sustain it. I feel we've kind of hit midsummer and everybody's suddenly like, "Ugh, I'm exhausted." And it's like, nope, nope, can't take a break. Gotta keep moving, keep
Mm-hmm.
pushing. But I think one of the most important takeaways is that this is an ongoing thing. No, you don't have to be, angrily posting and, proselytizing to people every day through your social media, but you should make sure that you are constantly engaging and thinking. And so that any day someone calls me up and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I have an answer for it. I can say, "Hey, actually,
Mm-hmm.
today we are working on this," or "This is an
Mm-hmm.
ongoing project." And I think that's how real change is made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes for all these issues. That goes for the environment as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be every day a part of your conversation.
Yeah, and it sounds like community. This is all really focused on community, and Maine Beer Co. To me, when I have been reading about the company, but after trying and enjoying all the beers, have really realized that there is a really strong organic following. And one of the things I thought was really cool that you're working on, and it's a little bit it's a little bit more lighthearted and focused on just having, I think, a good time, is the bike ride. Um,
Mhm.
how did that come about? I'm curious. Beer and bike riding go hand in hand so well, and they
Yeah.
sound like very dangerous to mix. It can be really. It is. They go
Post
great.
ride.
Yeah. Okay. There you
So,
go.
are you referring to the LL Bean
Yeah, I
bike and
am.
brew
Yeah.
ride? Okay. So
Yeah.
we actually have a lot of connections within the biking community. That actually stemmed. David Kleban is an avid cyclist and has been
Mm-hmm.
for quite some time. So when we joined 1% for the Planet, one of the organizations that he onboarded was the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. And
Mm-hmm.
despite the name being Bicycle Coalition, they are working for both bike and pedestrian safety throughout the state. So that was one of the first steps. We have a
Mm-hmm.
beer called Post Ride Snack, and the idea is after your ride. So not drinking and
Okay.
riding, but after your ride. And then being here in Freeport, we have obviously the other kind of mainstay of the community is LL Bean, and for a lot of them would come over here and have a beer after their shift. Discussions got had, and we so first Dave inspired a lot of other folks here to take up cycling. So we went from David being a rider to suddenly having like 5 or 6 staff who were avid cyclists. And
Mm-hmm.
then as more people came on, I won't call myself an avid cyclist, but I got really excited about it. So I have a bike
Mm-hmm.
now, and I ride to and from work. I do smaller rides. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
the 30-mile type, not yet.
Yeah, I'm
Getting
with you on
there.
that. Yeah.
But I understand it. I appreciate it. It's fun. So the idea for the Bike and Brew ride came about, and we worked with the folks at LL Bean, specifically their bike, boat, and ski store, and got this organized. It's a ride that goes through Freeport. Right now, it's on hold because we can't figure out a way to safely get all of those people to gather and still follow all of the COVID restrictions. But we operated it since 2017, and the idea was Thursdays, 5 o'clock. This ride went out. Several different groups based on your speed and ability. So A group, B group, C group. It developed and got more, so we now have a D group. I would have been more like maybe the N group was probably my speed, but we're getting there. But it was really great, and it went from the first year having 30 to 40 riders on Thursdays to last year we had, I would say, on average 60 to 80 riders a week. And we kept running tabs of who was showing up, and it was just this really great community, and you were seeing people every week, and they were engaged and they were riding, and they'd come back here and everybody got a token for a free beer at the end. And it was a good group of people. And as a result, we've engaged with many of those people in, our other nonprofit work. There's a group of us that we kind of do a paddle and brew here and there. So go out in kayaks or on paddle boards. So it's a really great community. And then again, sort of the other side of that, backed with the Bicycle Coalition, we supported their bike ride every year, which is called Bike Maine. And that was probably hands down one of my favorite events, and probably one of my biggest losses in terms of an event this year, because it was seriously my favorite to go on. But usually about 400 to 500 riders, and they changed regions each year to showcase different areas of Maine. Also to bring financial support to those areas, because they're talking millions of dollars every year of economics just fueling these small areas in Maine. We went all the way up to the county, which when you come to Maine, the county is Aroostook. It is a very large area. It's the farthest north, and it was the most beautiful, most welcoming place I've ever been. And these people are riding for a week straight, usually an average about 60 miles every single day, starting at one point and visiting these host communities each night until they come back full circle at the end. And it's just a really great community to be a part of, and exciting that beer took us to, sort of these great groups of people.
Yeah, that's what I love. Food, wine, beer. I've worked in restaurants before doing this throughout my career. Worked in beer bars, and I've always loved how it just gets people together. You can have people from Wall Street to artists in Soho to all sitting at the same bar and talking and finding like common points all through the shared experience of having a beer. And I love that. And I think one of the things that I was really impressed with with Maine Beer Company and its community building is from a business standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, is how much money is actually being donated. It's pretty substantial. And one that really sticks out to me is the support you've given with Wolf's Necks and the organic dairy farm there, and supporting their solar energy initiative.
I was hoping you'd ask about them. They're they're one of my personal favorites. I can't play favorites. I like so much. I really care so much about most of our organizations, but as someone who lives here in Freeport, Wolf's Neck Center is such a special place. I'm originally from central Pennsylvania, so I'm very used to dairy farms. And to drive to Wolf's Neck, and if you've never been, it's right on the coast, and Maine coast is rocky and woods covered. So this is a dairy farm right on the coast, and when you kind of turn into their property, you get kind of equal waft of ocean air and cow manure.
Yeah.
It's a very weird contrast of things, but it's just this amazing property. The Smith family, who originally owned it, they were, I think, from Philadelphia, spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. Mr. Smith was, I'm going to get it wrong, but he worked in politics, and they moved to Maine and started buying up this property, and definitely doing it very quietly, but with the goal of someday turning all of this land over to the state. And the idea was they wanted to protect and preserve this beautiful land. And they were doing this in the 1940s. Like, we don't think about land preservation in the 1940s, but that's what they were doing. And they started an organic beef farm originally, and it evolved over time. They donated that land. They donated the land that became Wolf's Neck State Park, Pettingill Farm, tons of spaces. And you don't always really see their name on it, but man, these people were fascinating when you really dig into who they are and what they did. But the folks who run Wolf's Neck Center, they are focused, rather than sustainability, on regenerative agriculture. And their position is that sustainability is not enough. Sustainability is just us treading water. Regenerative helps us kind of push this back, helps us regain. And every single time we go there, just learning the different things. We have a crew that's been started volunteering there this summer, once a week. And we're helping them right now with their strawberry fields and some of that harvest, because without kind of the normal crews that normally come in because of COVID, there's basically food that's going to rot in in this land if it's not being picked. So we're picking these strawberries. The B grade strawberries are going towards making jam. They do a lot of donations to local food pantries. But one of the things that we learned last time, they actually just got this new piece of equipment that they're working with a group who does aquaculture. They're going to be harvesting seaweed, pelletizing it, and feeding it to the cows as part of their regular food. Cows produce the most greenhouse gases out of any kind of human caused bad air. And they're hoping to reduce the amount of methane that the cows produce by feeding them seaweed. So this machine will feed them, but also track the amount of methane being produced. It will track what cows are really excited about the seaweed, which ones aren't. But the overall goal of the study is to kind of help change, fight climate change in the dairy industry. Just like, wow, so cool. Yeah. And bringing together aquaculture and agriculture. That's where these conversations need to be happening. I think so many of these, you have people fighting climate from so many different angles, and it's like, hey, how do we bridge this gap? How do we work together? And their solar is the other part of that. We started an initiative last year as part of our giving to donate solar to our different nonprofits. Last year it was Wolf's Neck, so we helped fund the new solar panels on their dairy. This year it's Center for Wildlife. They're a small rescue and rehabilitation center in Cape Nettic, Maine. And they just built a new facility. These people they're just the most amazing people you've ever met. They've been operating, honestly, out of a space the size of a trailer. And now they have this new facility, and we were able to donate enough solar that it will cover their electric for the next 25 years. So beyond being good for the environment, it's helping them with, that money that they would pay for electric, they can now redivert to things they really need for their facility. So it's exciting.
When you were talking through the strawberries, I was hoping you were going to go in line with like a strawberry sour type of collaboration there.
Probably not making a strawberry beer, but man, we ate a lot of them. And,
Yeah, I
uh,
love strawberry picking. I grew up in St. Louis. There's lots of farms
mhm.
around, and we would go strawberry picking as kids. Um, and yeah, there's nothing like picking fresh strawberries off and just like eating them right there in the field. It's
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
it's great, and they're like, that entire part of their farm is organic. So the
Hmm.
strawberries aren't going to look, that perfect like strawberry,
Hmm.
but man, they are so good. And
Hmm.
knowing that they really do not waste anything that looks a little odd or has a bruising on it goes right towards making strawberry jam. And it's like, yes, awesome. Use
Yeah,
every part of this.
it's amazing how the physical imperfections get played up so much in the
Yeah.
selling of food,
Yep.
and how it results in so much food waste.
Hmm.
So it's great to hear that it's not being wasted, and especially right now where we're having food supply issues,
Yep.
um, and farms not being able to get it out. Um, you know, it's I think it's a kind of a mystery to people as far as like how food's produced, the actual environmental impact it has, and I'm specifically speaking to cows, how hard they are in the environment. And so when you're saying that they emit some of the most CO2, um, is that coming from the fact that it takes a lot of like oil and water to keep the lands?
Nope,
Is it in the
it's gas.
transportation?
Nope,
Gas. Okay, it's
it's
just
straight
gas.
gas.
Okay,
They are
it's
they are
unbelievable.
they are creating the
A lot of
gas.
gas. Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's to your point of people don't necessarily know where their food comes from. I had a friend one time who she pointed at a Holstein, which it's the classic black and white cow you see on Ben and Jerry's, and she's like,
Hmm.
oh, she's like, you're beautiful, but you're so tasty. And I was like, you don't eat those cows. Like, what? I was like, that's a dairy cow. I was like, you don't eat those.
Quite
Um,
different.
Very different. But I think obviously there are different ways people take this. Oh, we just stop eating. There are plenty of people who say, let's stop eating meat. But, you know, the reality is that most people are going to continue, and same with dairy. So
Hmm.
if this is a thing, how do we mitigate it? How do we change it? And hey, who knows? Cows might be really excited about seaweed, and
Hmm.
that can drop it. I believe they said like 60%, which is insane.
That's amazing. Just on the taste level, I'm really curious to how that's going to affect cheese and dairy. And I would love to actually taste, uh,
Yeah,
milk from a cow that's been eating seaweed versus grass
yeah. I would
or
think it would be
grain.
really good.
Yeah, I would think.
You know,
We'll find out.
we sure will. And it's exciting. I mean, aquaculture in general, like we should all be eating more seaweed. It's
Hmm.
just this almost endless resource, and it's good for our oceans. It's good for us. Oysters, that's another area. We actually work with a lot of oyster farmers. There are some folks nearby us, Love Point Oysters, who we
Hmm.
actually helped onboard them to 1% for the planet, and just learning about that aspect of aquaculture, that they are these little things just filtering water
Hmm.
all day long, and they're so good for our environment. It's like eat more oysters. Okay.
Hmm. One of as we start to wrap, I would love to just talk through, where you're sourcing your hops from,
Hmm.
um, and what that process is like. Um, because when the first time I saw a hop, I couldn't believe what it looked like. It kind of looked like a cross between like cannabis and Brussels sprouts. It
Yep.
has like this really interesting shape, and they're very pungent. Sorry, are you getting everything from Maine, or is it all around?
No. So the bulk of our hops are coming from Yakima Valley. We work
Hmm.
with Yakima Chief. They're an amazing farm. It's really cool because, again, very very similar values to us. I believe they're B Corp, and
Hmm.
we've talked with them about joining 1% for the planet as well. But they work with a collective of smaller farms as well. So any of our experimental hops are coming through our association with that farm. But yeah, the best hops. When you talk about hops, I always use the parallel of wine grapes. When you think of regions in the United States, honestly, some of the best grapes and some of the best hops are coming from the Pacific Northwest. So it's not to say that those hops can't be grown in Maine. Maine is just a really rough area for that kind of production, and they're going to taste different. You know, a Chardonnay grape grown in France is going to taste very different from a Chardonnay grape grown in California. The terroir really influences all of those things, and same goes for hops. That's not to say that we haven't checked it out. We have been working. There are a couple different hop farms here in Maine that we've worked with and used some of their hops. The beer we came out with this year to celebrate Maine's bicentennial. Another thing that's put on a little bit of a pause, but we used some Maine-grown hops for that beer. But for the size of production that we're doing, it's really hard to get enough hops because a lot of these farmers here in Maine are very small. So for a consistent production, we're not able to just source local. That being said, malt in Maine, the barley production has really, really skyrocketed. It's so cool to see that business really expand in Maine. Because again, when you're looking at where we're sourcing our materials, transportation is a huge part of the environmental impact. So being able to get grain coming very locally is awesome. Aroostook County, that I mentioned before, they're known like the bulk of potatoes in our country are coming from Aroostook County. What people don't know, the cover crop for potatoes is barley. Right now, most of the farmers are not using a brewer grade barley, but there's an organization called the Maine Grain Alliance that's working really hard to educate farmers and try and convince them to make that switch. So that way they'll be getting, they'll have financially viable crops on both turns. And it will meet the need of all of these local breweries. Because everybody is like, Maine Malt House, Blue Ox Malt House, we want your grains. Because they're exceptional quality and they're doing a really great job.
Well, and I really appreciate your time today and talking through everything. I feel like I've learned a lot. And I'm, as a business owner we're part of 1% of the planet as well. But I think you guys are really setting the bar as far as something to achieve and work towards. So keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you. It's
likewise.
Always good to have other organizations that care about this and are excited to keep that conversation going. So thank you.
Thank you.
I hope everyone had a chance to crack open a beer while we talked with Anne and learn more about the give back efforts over at Maine Beer Company now. If you have any other show ideas and like to get in touch, please email us at hi@weareunconquered.co, and please rate and subscribe on Apple or Spotify.